navigate the second half of your life. Today's show is sponsored by Find Houston Senior Care, your one-stop shop for everything senior care and senior living in the greater Houston area. Visit findhoustonseniorcare.com today. And now, here's your host, Catherine Watson. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Life After 50 show. I'm Catherine Watson. I'm your host today, and I am delighted that we can be here. It's been quite a challenging few days for all of those in Houston and throughout Texas with this winter storm that we had. Started out maybe kind of fun. Wow, we're getting snow. That's not a very common thing in Texas. But then it turned into kind of a nightmare. So for all of you out there that are still dealing with loss of power, I feel for you and hope that it's all restored soon for everybody. But I'm here today to talk to Jean Lee. Jean Lee is an author, and she is one of the co-founders of Alz Authors. And we're going to talk more about that later in the show. But today, Jean is with us because she has a riveting story of her own story. And she is the author of a book called Alzheimer's Daughter. And Jean, just put that book up, if you will, please. Hold that book up for us. I'm not sure. I think Jean has frozen on the screen. So we're going to let Jean log out and log back in and hopefully clear that out. Jean, if you can hear me. Can you log out and log back in, please? Well, she's still frozen on the screen. So I'm going to go forward and hopefully Jean will realize that she's frozen on the screen, log out and log back in. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and just put Jean down to the bottom. Okay, so here we are. And it looks like Jean is coming back in. Let me get her out of here. Okay, there we go. There's Jean. Okay. Hey, little technical glitch. It happens all the time. No big deal. Thanks for coming back. And here we are. So we're here to talk to Jean about her book. Hold up your book for us, Jean. Alzheimer's Daughter. You really need to get this book. It is amazing story that Jean lived through. And she learned so much. And that's the beauty of these challenges that we often get in our lives, is that we learn a lot that can help other people. Right, Jean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Jean dealt with a situation where both of her parents had dementia. Jean, tell us a little bit about that.
So this book was written through the lens of both of my parents being diagnosed on the same day with Alzheimer's. And it sounds unbelievable that that could happen, but it was not unexpected. My sister and my sister, who I live in Ohio, my sister lives in Florida. We had noticed for about 6 years prior to the diagnosis that our parents were changing and they were becoming unsafe, not making sense. There were just many glitches that we noticed. This was all happening in my 50s, so it's appropriate that this be on a Life After 50 show. This was my late 40s, early 50s. For about a decade during that time, I was working full-time, teaching third grade. And my sister is 7 years older than I am, lived 1,000 miles away, but had always been my protector in life and had remained very close to my parents. She'd come and visit every summer and often at Christmas time. We lived in a very small town. We were raised in a very small town, and she wanted her children, even though she lived in more of an urban area at this point, she wanted her children to understand that small town upbringing. So she was very involved. That's not always the case. And we were very lucky to grow a stronger relationship during those times that we notice those glitches, oddities. She suggested to me that I start a journal, never intending that it would become a book, but just so that she and I could communicate. I would call her on my way home from my stopping at my parents' every day after school. I would call her and try to review what was happening. If I hadn't spoken to her for a couple of days, I'd say, oh, a couple of days ago, this really odd thing happened. And she said, Jean, why don't you write them down and date them? And then we'll, as time goes forward, we'll have a record of these things that may be helpful in a diagnosis. So during that entire time, we were really seeking the diagnosis and trying to get to the right kind of a doctor, a geriatric specialist. So when the dual diagnosis came, it was awful, but it was not unexpected.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's true of most of us. We know that something is happening before we get that diagnosis. And it's just natural. We want to hope it's not happening. We want to live in the world where this didn't happen and this isn't touching our lives. And that's just, I think that's human nature. I really do. We want to protect them. And I think also, Jean, I noticed it doesn't follow a straight line progression. Today, mom seems perfectly fine. And tomorrow, she's just totally off her rocker, and you have these ebb and flows and you start to second guess yourself. Well, maybe I'm imagining this. And you're lucky, at least your sister worked with you. That doesn't always happen, like you said. A lot of times they work against. I know with my brother in law, when my mother in law was starting to show signs, he thought we were making things up. His mother wasn't like that. That wasn't happening. And we must be making things up. So you're lucky in that respect. You needed some luck on your side, Jean. Let's face it. You had a lot to deal with. So, where do you go? What do you do when you get a diagnosis like that for two parents at one time? I mean, what do you do, Jean?
Oh boy. I mean, they were very reluctant. We lived in a small town. They were very reluctant to have anyone know about this diagnosis. So there weren't many places for me to turn. Once the doctor issued the diagnosis, which was I'll never forget, in the office that day, my dad becoming more enraged than I've ever seen him in his life toward the doctor. How can you use the A word with me? And my mom just becoming, the doctor was about my age. She almost became like, I should wash your mouth out with soap or something like that.
Right,
That kind
right.
of attitude. How dare you say that about us? And the word Alzheimer's was never spoken again between us because it was so offensive to them, and they didn't want people to know. And since it was such a small town, I felt as though by revealing that, I was violating their healthcare privacy. So I just tried to prop them up every day by stopping on my way home from work, and I would dispense their meds and try to kind of make order of the house. And some of the suspicions of the diagnosis related to that were that my mom had completely stopped cooking. And cooking had been such a big part of her life. And food, opened boxes of food, stacked cans, just overtook the kitchen because she would go to the grocery store, not realize she had these things already, and keep buying them, but stack them on the counter and just eat the snacky things. and they lived within a block of a local restaurant, and they began eating 2 meals a day at that local restaurant. So your question, where did I go for help? There weren't many places to go for help. Anything that I knew, we had to eventually move them out of their home. They were
Mhm.
so opposed to that. But any
Yeah.
of that would be 30 minutes from us. So I went to visit communities. As a teacher working in a small community, most of my coworkers were not from my community. They were from outside. And
Okay.
they were people who a small handful of them, maybe 3 or 4 of them, I could confide in. And I knew
Mm.
that they had lost a parent or they were going through something like this. And we became support for one another, stopping in each other's room at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, just talking about what we were facing on a daily basis with challenges. So,
Mhm. Wow, wow. Well, I'm glad you were able to find some support group because that's really hard when we try to hold it all in.
uh,
It just at some point you're going to explode. At some point you're going to fall apart. You're going to have health issues.
mhm.
And so I'm glad you at least were able to find some people that you could confide in. That's really hard in a small town like that. Like you said, you didn't want to dishonor your parents' wishes of keeping this private, but at the same time, you were worried. You
Right.
had concerns, and I can't blame you. Did you ever worry that they might wander and get lost, or was that ever something that happened?
Yes, and they had such kind neighbors. They lived on a little dead end street, and many people on that street were just so kind and caring about them. They'd stop and check on them, and they would report to me that they saw them lost out on the highway. I mean,
Oh gosh.
that kind of thing. That was so hard, I'm sure, for them
Mhm.
to do
Absolutely.
with me,
Yeah.
because they had to feel like they were tattling, yet
Mm.
they knew I needed to know this. I would be so concerned, and they were so concerned. And
Mhm.
I was really, they were pretty good about staying close. I do write about a couple of circumstances where they, took off and they were shoppers, they wanted to go to the mall, that kind of thing. Would they get home? All right. But my concern really was, I knew they were taking a risk driving. That
Mm.
greatly concerned me. But the bigger concern was that they could hurt someone else,
Yeah.
which they would never, ever have wanted to do. And they couldn't believe that they were at the point where that could really happen to them.
Mhm. Yeah. So you took away the car keys, I presume, at some point. How did you do that?
That's a great question, too. So within this diagnosis, from a geriatric specialist, he wrote a prescription on a prescription pad
Yay.
that they needed to stop driving,
Oh,
and
god.
they needed to either seek support in their home living situation or move. And
Mm.
there was something about him writing that down on
Mhm.
two little prescriptions
Right.
that meant something to my mom and dad, and it meant something to me.
Mm.
As we would revisit, you can't drive. And I got
Mhm.
to the point where I had to check the odometer on the car, and that was very hard. And we have to make a decision about how you're living. I could pick up these RX prescriptions written by a doctor and say, no, we have these have to be done. These decisions have to be made. So just those two little pieces of
That
paper propped
Yeah.
me up a lot.
Now was that their a family or their, um, just their regular physician, or was it the neurologist?
It was a geriatric specialist.
Wow. Yeah.
We started out, with an internist who had taken care of them for many, many years. And my sister and I were able to communicate with him behind the scenes, which had we not been able to do that, I don't know how we ever would have gotten a referral to this geriatric specialist who then did the testing on them for Alzheimer's. But it was a progression of doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember their internist who they trusted immensely because they'd seen him for years. Because my sister and I had communicated with him by email behind the scenes, he said to them, well, I just want to bring a team of doctors together to care for your health as best as possible here in your 80s. He presented it just so nicely like that.
Oh, that's
And
great.
my mom saw right through it. And we had the appointment set and everything. I'd taken the day off of work. I arrived at their house. They had the curtains closed, the doors locked. They wouldn't open the door to let me in. And my mom was saying, we don't want to meet with the committee.
Oh.
So even though he, framed it in such a lovely way, she was like, no, we
She
don't want
wasn't
to.
buying it. Oh, goodness. Well, you have certainly had some struggles. So I want to know how you got them to move into that senior care facility. That is a big challenge for a lot of people. We all dream of and want to stay in our home for the rest of our lives. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And this is one of those situations where it clearly wasn't going to work. And so when you find yourself in that position, Jean, what did you do and what do you wish you maybe would have done looking back now? Because hindsight is always better, right? And we're here to learn from you because you have been through this. And a lot of the people who are listening to this show are maybe right in the middle of it or maybe just beginning it.
Well, as I said, I went to visit different communities. And I just walked in unannounced, no appointment. I wanted to see them as they were. I found one that my dad was a lifelong Mason, and this community was a Masonic community. And I believed that with his Masonic ties, this might work. He had always admired this senior care community from afar, from half hour away, but they would sometimes have meetings there, that kind of thing. And I thought, okay, this might work. And so my sister and I took them for a tour there, and they were I remember I referred to it in the book as it was kind of like we were leading a puppy on a chain who was putting their brakes on. We don't want to go. But ended up, having a pleasant day there. Ended up miraculously signing paperwork to go. And we thought, oh, okay, we've done it. We have pushed this boulder up the hill, and we're going to get them there. They were on a waiting list, so that waiting list took maybe 3 or 4 months for someone to move out. Within that time, they went back on that decision at least 6 or 7 times. Very angry. We are not going to move there. No way. We're not going. And so it would be like we've got this boulder up the hill and it would come rolling back over us, and we'd push it back up again. We'd say, no, you've signed paperwork. These are the prescriptions. This is what has to be done. And finally, we did move them in there. And it was, I remember the night that my sister and I left them there. They stood in the window of their apartment and waved to us out the window. And they realized at that point somewhat, okay, this is what has to happen. We don't want it to happen. This is what has to happen. And they stood there arm in arm arms around one another, waving to us from the window as we walked away. And I've been back to that community many times because I do some speaking and some advocacy work there for those authors and for that community because I believe in it. And every time I pull into that parking lot, I think about looking up into that window and how on that night they faced it. There were many other nights going forward that it didn't go so well. But as you say, it's such a back and forth thing. One moment it can be fine, and then other moment, you're backtracking great.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the challenge. Oh, wow. What a story, what a journey. And do you have any suggestions for caregivers who are faced with that challenge and they're struggling because they don't want to, a lot of times we don't want to disappoint mom and dad. We don't want to make them angry. And so we're just struggling with, this thing that we know has to happen. On one level, we know it has to happen, but how do you get from there to here?
Our parents were wonderful people. They raised us with kindness. We never had conflict in our family. So that's what made it so doubly hard to have this conflict. And miraculously, just as kind of a side story to this, because they were diagnosed on the same day and they had a dual decline, they were never angry with one another.
Oh,
It was
that's
never as though mom said, oh, your dad is, maybe he's not the best driver anymore. Dad never said, oh, mom doesn't know how to, put clothes from the washer to the dryer. They just held hands, went through it together. But my sister and I were the bad guys. And we had never been disrespectful to our parents. So this was very difficult for us, but we'd rather be the bad guys than have them turn on each other.
and that's an important thing to bring out, Jean. Sometimes we have to step up and be the bad guy and make the tough decisions because it's the right thing to do. And nobody ever said the right thing was the easy thing. Often doing the right thing is the hard thing. So I applaud you for realizing that and knowing that, yeah, you have to be the bad guy. I know with my mother-in-law, I'm the one who took away the car keys. Her two sons weren't going to do it. There were multiple problems. She would confide in me and tell me what was going on, where she wouldn't always confide in them and tell them. So I think on one part, she wanted me to do this, but we had a caregiver coming in and I told the caregiver, I said, you need to take those keys and I'm going to tell you where to put them where she can't reach them and she won't know where they are anyway. But when we come in to visit, because we lived 4 hours away, when we come in to visit, we know where they are. And the next day, my mother-in-law called me and she said, are you that she-devil that took away my car keys? And I said, yes, ma'am, I guess I am. She says, oh, okay. And that was the end of it. I was shocked. I was really expecting a big fight. She let it go. That was it. She just wanted to know who to blame. And then that was it. So it was interesting. And you don't know how they're going to react. And you just have to do what's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And your question about suggestions, I would suggest to anyone that they keep that journal. You don't think you have time to do it. And my journal ended up in a 70-page spiral bound notebook that none of my third graders wanted. It was a leftover. And I would just jot down dates and things. Fleshed it out more when I was writing this book, a lot more certainly. But it did become a tool that was used by the social worker in this geriatric office where they received their diagnosis. They went through that journal and looked at timelines and oddities that were happening, things that if you were just sitting with a doctor, conferring with them, you wouldn't be able to recall and come up with a timeline for that. So I would say a journal. Secondly, stay close to your siblings if there's any way you can. If you are the far away sibling, believe what the nearby person is telling you, because they don't want to be telling you about these things that are happening. Believe them. Don't ever put it off like, oh, you're making more of this than really is happening. I would, if my sister was on speed dial when I left mom and dad's, and she always believed me. She always helped from afar, anything she could do. Phone calls. Often you make a phone call to a care community and they don't know whether you're living 10 miles away or 1,000 miles away. She would do anything she could in that way. And she came often.
That's great.
She came often to help me and wanted to remain as vivid in their minds as possible. So those are the two things I would say: keep a journal and stay close to family.
Yeah. And I would add to that, if it is not possible, because sometimes it's not, to stay close to family. Sometimes there's just too much friction going on. Create your own family. Have a support group. Join a support group. Get with people who will support you and be your family, so to speak. You've got to have that village to help. You can't do this alone. Nobody can do this alone. You've got to have some support. So definitely get there. Jean, you talk about something, and I can remember when I had to clean out my mom's home and how difficult that was. I literally walked around for 3 hours, and my husband called and said, how are things going? And I said, I haven't touched a thing. I felt like I was violating their privacy. And that was the hardest thing in the world. Tell us about your story.
So when we moved our parents to the senior care community, the house was still left behind. 40 years worth of possessions in that house. It was a small ranch house, but boy, a lot of stuff can be
A lot of stuff
in a small ranch house. And they were, post-depression era savers. Every butter tub, every mismatched lid, every school project of mine, every report card saved in the moldy basement. So much hoarding of things, cleaning it out. I found like 34 rolls of aluminum foil.
That sounds like my mom.
Buying it. And I would go every night after work. I'd leave school and stop at the house. And there were angel neighbors across the street who would come and check on me. And I would fill trash bags and they would haul them to the curb on trash day. The hardest thing, I think, was that it had to be purged. But I didn't know the memories behind these things that I was finding and had never seen before. I knew these things had significance, but I couldn't determine what it was. And the stories were gone with mom and dad's minds. Gone. And the guilt that you speak about, yes, that stuff had to be tossed, had to be purged. And you just I felt like I was purging them as I was cleaning out that house. Those were the darkest days of it all for me, to get that house cleaned out. And I knew I had to sell the house because we had to work with those funds to keep them where they were. And it was just, it was a very gruesome time.
Yeah.
I feel for anyone who has to do that. It's a gruesome time and a private time. Because there's really nobody else who can help you go through those things either.
Right.
So
It is a tough time. Like I said, I can remember like walking around for 3 hours. I couldn't open a drawer because I felt like I was invading their privacy. And Finally, I got up the courage and I opened a drawer, and I have to tell you what I found inside. I found an instrument that my dad used. He was a heart patient and had been for years. And there was this machine that he used that he would connect to him. And this was way back in early 2000s, late 90s and early 2000s. And he hooked it up to him, and the doctor could read, I think it was for his pacemaker. I'm not sure, but I wasn't sure. I knew it had some significance. So I called the doctor's office and I said, I've got this thing and I don't know if what I should do with it. Is it still useful? And if so, is there anybody that could use it? And they were thrilled. They said, we've got a patient whose insurance won't pay for it. We really need to get him one. We've been trying to find one, and you are a lifesaver. So I brought it to them, and that made the process so much easier for me then, because I could justify, that what I was doing had some good. But it is tough. It is tough. There are some people I found out later, and I've got some friends that I know that do senior move management, and they actually go in and help. And it is helpful sometimes to have an outside person looking at things with you that don't have that emotion attached, that can help you sort through. But it's a task that nobody even thinks about. Nobody really thinks about this until it happens to you.
Within the clean out, I found a little box in the back corner of a closet. And I
Mm-hmm.
picked up and I realized it was my mom and dad's World War II love letters.
Wow. Oh, that just made my heart sing.
So in that one of those letters, well, they're on the front,
Right.
whoops, whoops,
You
whoops, of the cover, but one of those letters starts each chapter.
Ah, how
I,
beautiful.
I've had readers say that the letters are my mom and dad's voice in their early love story
Mm-hmm.
that carry them through the devastation of
Right.
Alzheimer's at the end, and allowed their love to remain strong. But even finding that box, I describe it in
Wow.
the book,
Yes.
was a Hallmark box, like you get
Mhm.
Hallmark cards in gold foil.
Right.
And these letters were stacked like little files in a little file cabinet. And my dad's dog tags were on the top, jingling around. And
Mhm.
I found these, opened them up, realized they were our parents' love letters, and felt like I cannot read them. These were not meant for my eyes. I'm not going to violate them this way. So my sister and I took that little gold box to our mom and dad where they lived in the senior community, left it there with them because they were theirs.
Mhm.
When we had to move them, that was the first of many moves, then to an assisted living place, and then to a secure memory locked unit. We kept moving this box with them, and
Mhm.
we didn't open it because it was theirs.
Mhm.
And after my dad died, my mom died first, and my dad died a year later. After dad died, my sister and I stood over my trash can, outside garbage can, dumped it in. Said, no, we can't look at these. These are not for our eyes to see. We're very, committed
Mm.
to these. Are private to them. And then my sister said, let's just peek. So we started to take them out. We peeked at one and we got them out. And we put them in chronological order. And I am so glad that she said that to me,
Mhm.
because they really are just the core of what is here. It showed
Yeah.
a love story that held them together till the
And
very end.
Jean, if she didn't want anybody to see them, they would have destroyed them a long time ago. You know? That's the truth. So they knew that at some point somebody would read those, and that's okay.
And
So,
those letters are so cute to read because they talk about the mundane things. They wrote on one side of the paper, mailed it back, wrote on the other side of the paper. I mean, every piece of paper was used. And they talk about, well, I spent $1.25 to get my hair cut. Things that couples text about.
Right.
Today.
Right.
But that the 2 little pennies on the cover are the little pennies that I found in that box of letters. And at one point, my dad writes to my mom. They had planned to wait to get married until after World War II. And he writes and says, for 2 cents, I'd come home for 2 cents. Maybe I should come home. We'll get married on a weekend furlough. And she sends the letter back to him with these 2 pennies.
Wow.
2 cents is all you need. And
I love it.
so, I mean, I never would have known that story without having read the letters.
You wouldn't have. You wouldn't have. That's wonderful. That's the treasure, a treasure. Absolutely. And you do, when you do go through their stuff, you do find treasures. You find interesting things and you find treasures. You talk about some of the interesting things that you found and you wonder, why did they keep all this aluminum foil? I found a box of Timex watches, I mean, Timex watches aren't worth anything. She had a whole box full of them, Not sure why she kept those, but she did, So, Jean, we are getting close to running out of time. So I want you to tell us a little bit about Al's authors. And I'm going to put the link up here. And if you will just tell us a little bit about that organization, how you came to found it, and what they have to offer, because I think that can be a resource for people who are watching this show as well.
Thank you. So when I wrote this, I really meant it to be just for family. It's a very personal story. I wrote it with great guilt, feeling as though I was violating my parents by writing it in their privacy. I joined a local writing group to help me write it well. They said this has a larger scope. They helped me, clean it up to publish it, pushed me to publish it. On the night that I pushed the final publish button, I really thought I could be struck by lightning and die.
Oh.
I'm joking about that because I had violated their privacy. I hope no one would find this in Amazon. I hoped it would gather dust and mold in the basement of Amazon, but people started reading it and leaving kind reviews, which helped heal me. I sent it to another author whose work I had read. I had read my way through the journey. Anyone who would share a personal story with me helped me move forward. They kept breathing so I could. So I reached out to an author who I had read, and they said, Jean, would you work with me to elevate these works, these books about Alzheimer's written from personal experience? And we brought another author in who I had read, and we co-founded allsauthors.com in 2015. And now we seek out books written from personal experience with Alzheimer's and dementia. We now have over 260 authors worldwide who have written for us about why the story behind their stories, why they revealed their own personal journey. And it has been thrilling to see where we are now a nonprofit, to see that grow. With it is our passion project. And to see that grow and help other people who are currently on the journey. We have books for children, books written by spouses or partners of a loved one suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia. We have books about Lewy body dementia. We have books written by people living with memory impairment. We have memoir, we have fiction. We have a book to fit, we feel, every need that a reader might have who is going through this journey. So I would be absolutely honored if your listeners would check out alzauthors.com. And if they need to read stories that relate to them, they will find something there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I also want to put up your Facebook page. And can they find, I presume they can find your book, Alzheimer's Daughter, on Amazon or wherever books are found, right?
And on alzauthors.com, we have a bookstore there that has
Oh, okay.
these 260 books and growing. Every week we bring in a new one. And you just click on the cover of the book, it goes straight to Amazon. The books, you can get them either in paperback delivered to your door in a couple of days, or in moments delivered to your Kindle device. And many of them are on audiobook too, if you prefer to listen that way. Alzheimer's Daughter is an audiobook too. But just about alzauthors.com, the guilt we all feel when we go through this and the privacy of this story, All's Authors has helped us heal. It helped me heal. The creation of that helped me heal. We believe our lost loved ones brought us together to heal ourselves and others. So we believe we have something healing for you there if you come and find a book that works for you.
Right. And I'm going to put that website up again, just in case you didn't get it. We are also going to have Jean on at the March conference, the senior-conference.com. And I'm going to put that website up now, March the 12th. You can go ahead and pre-register for it right now. We do not have the full registration page up, but you can put your email in, and as soon as it's up and ready, we will make sure you get an email to let you know so that you can sign up and attend the conference. Of course, it's always free of charge. All of the conferences that I put on together in co-partnership with Care Partners are at no charge at all. So we want to just spread the word and get lots of information out there. Jean will be there, and she will be able to connect directly with you and answer your questions and talk to you. So, and we'll be in a private room for some of that question answering. So I do want you to sign up for the senior conference. We'd love to have you there and listen to Jean. Jean, again, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Catherine, for having me. I'm honored.
Yes, well, I'm glad you were able to come, and Jean actually showed up at the last minute because the guest who was supposed to be today, Jean was supposed to be next week, but the guest who was supposed to be today is in Dallas with no power. So Jean graciously jumped in at the last minute. So please share this video with your friends so that others can get this wonderful information from Jean. Thanks for joining us on the Life After 50 show, where we help you navigate the second half of your life. Join us every Wednesday live on Facebook, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And don't forget to visit findhoustonseniorcare.com and the senior-conference.com.